So this is Scatter, which is a patch I developed where I wanted to take some of the ideas from I don't actually know how their company is, Champion Lecky, not sure, skitter pedal, which uses a reverb and a tremolo, but also allows you to send the tremolo signal to the dry signal path or the reverb signal path and invert them like I'm doing in this particular setting. So as the reverb gets louder, the dry path gets quieter, and you get some interesting phased modulated sounds out of that. Then I just, I sort of did some other things. I was working in stereo, which, I think one of the great things you can do with a tremolo in stereo is have different phases for the LFO on either side. So this may not come through very well on my phone, which is a monophonic microphone, but what happens is you can offset the phases of the LFO on either side, and it gives you a pretty broad stereo field, and with the middle stomp switch you can also turn on modulation, which will cause this relationship to change back and forth. And when you use it aggressively, it creates some I would say potentially disorienting stereo effects, like a real sort of seasick thing. But when used mildly, it creates a lovely washy, stereo image where the left and right field are sort of constantly shifting in relationship to one another. So there's some basic stuff here. There's a shape control, and the shape goes through different LFO shapes, from sine to square to triangle to sawtooth to ramp, and then a random. And there's a swing control that lets you shape those further. With the random, it controls the amount of filtering that is applied to the random, so how smoothly they transition from one point to another. There's two kind of kooky controls below that. This section is sort of the shape section. You can turn on random wave, which every time the tremolo cycles, there will be a different wave on either side. So you can get some interesting effects out of that. You can also set synced random wave, which means that the random waves will be the same on either side of the tremolo instead of separate from one another. And there's this invert control, which will invert the dry and reverb tremolo signals on either channel. So the left and the right will follow the left and the right channel on the reverb. And you can also switch the inversion so that the right channel is inverted from, or the left channel is inverted from the right, and the right channel is inverted from the left. Which can create some interesting swirling sort of patterns. Over here you have the phase offset for the LFO. It can be automated with this right stomp switch, as I said, and the clock divider for that is on this second page. It's this clock divider, and this clock divider is the one for the tremolo. I should label those before I publish this. So this is the one for the phase modulation. So right now it's set to 1/5 There's a depth control for how out of phase things get, which can go up to 180 degrees. Right now, so every time that the tremolo cycles, the phase moves out of cycle, and they come back together on every fifth beat, the two sides. Which, you know, again creates these sort of pulses that are outside the pulses of the tremolo, and creates stereo spread and lots of nice things, I think. The left stomp switch, I should say, is the tap tempo. It also responds to MIDI clock. And one thing I really like doing, this is like a secret feature, is pushing the clock divider up. You can do this with any tap tempo tremolo. And when you push the LFO into, you know, low audio rates, you get a ring modded, you know, let me turn the tremolo depth down on the dry signal. You get a ring modded, you know, reverb. You add random waveforms to that, it gets this, what I think is really lovely distortion that never quite settles down. But obviously, you know, it works as like a normal tremolo or a normal clock divided tremolo. Here's some reverb controls. The reverb is a hall reverb, just nice and clean and airy. And then there's a granular module before the reverb, and I've moved some of the controls here so you can set the pitch for that. You know, so if you wanted a sort of shimmery sound, you'd set the pitch to an octave up. You can set the mix between the granular and the unaffected signal. So it could all be pitch shifted, or a very little could be. There's a control for the grain size and the position, and those two will work together in such a way that they'll also create sort of a pre-delay for the pitch shifted sound. So you can control how it onsets. And the last thing, and you can freeze the granular, I'm sorry. If you wanted to freeze it, and play over it, you could. And the last thing that I'll mention, let me put this on something really choppy. The last thing that I'll mention is that for both the reverb depth on the tremolo and the dry signal tremolo, the depth actually goes up to 200%. And the reason that I did this, it creates a super hard chop. Let me turn it off. If we just listen to the reverb side, we'll hear it allows for these really nice, I think, syncopations to be able to push the depth above 100%, because essentially what you're doing is creating you know, larger spaces of silence. You know, as the depth exceeds 100, you know, you start having patches where there's no signal coming through, and then, you know, that's interrupted by the tremolo shape signal. But if you just want to use it with a traditional tremolo depth, you know, don't go above, you know, 0.5, and that's, you know, 100% would be at 0.5, so you can have. But I really like a tremolo that can go to a super hard chop, and this goes to a really, really hard chop if you push the depth up to 200%. And that's Scatter. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.